Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your questions 7 days a week. To kick off today's show, a little treat, a little amuse-bouche, we're very excited to welcome Kirk, who looks after YouTube's incredible live infrastructure team, to share with us some of the exciting things going on with YouTube Live. Kirk, welcome to Office Hours.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. Long-time viewer, first-time caller.
Alex, do you want to kick things off?
Yeah, so one of the things that we've been pushing for, and experimenting with, is a lot of the HDR and 5.1 and 5.1's coming, 4K, and how challenging has that been as far as supporting HDR on the platform?
It's something we'd first done a while ago, and it took a lot in order not only to enable a capability on YouTube, but even more so enable the ecosystem to do it. We have a fairly strong desire to allow creators to look as good, or as casual as they want. So we talk about both lean back and lean in experiences. I consider Office Hours very leaned in. And so therefore a lot of what we had to do is not just enable the capability inside of our own system, but also work across the ecosystem, like enhancing RTMP in order to support HDR, things like this. So this is essentially that desire to allow people to look as professional or as casual as they wish is one of the things that really drove the effort to do HDR.
Now, one of the things that we get a lot of questions about, because we're doing it every day right now, is that it looks different right after the show and during the show than it does 4 or 5 hours after the show. What can you give us a little inside scoop of what's happening there?
Sure. So in order to be efficient and real time, we're using certain very specific algorithms to move from to basically go from a live stream in both HDR and SDR. So our tone mapping right now is very close to what the MVC LUT is. We tweak it a little bit to support computer games as well. But, if you want to do something that's close in terms of the SDR rendering, the MVC LUT's a good reference point. There are different algorithms that are used once it turns into an archive. So usually what you'll do is you'll know the difference when it goes into the archive. One thing that we have been talking about, I cannot say when we'll actually be able to do it because of all the other commitments we have. But, we want to give more flexibility in terms of creators being able to upload whatever sort of LUT they can use to go from HDR to SDR. And we will match your color space in HDR. So it's the SDR that probably is that you'll probably see the biggest difference in.
Yeah. And do you have any preference, or do you see it easier to work in HLG or PQ?
This is a very
religious.
very.
I know we talk about not talking about religion, but I thought I'd bring up the HLG versus PQ question.
So there's a engineer at YouTube who is very very regular speaker at DMUX. His name is Steven. Really well known in the industry, and he has a long article and a DMUX talk talking why HLG is better. The reason we would prefer HLG, it doesn't have quite as bright as brights, but the range where you're most interested in has more flexibility than PQ does. PQ spends a lot of its data at very, very high luminosity. And there are some advantages to PQ, but we basically think HLG is better in terms of an overall color space. We support both, and while we prefer HLG, what we see is about 90% of the HDR that we get is actually PQ. So we have more data to tune our PQ
That's funny.
profiles than we do HLG, even though we prefer HLG.
And other than our show, what are the other folks? Who else is using HDR?
Well, certainly we get it through broadcast TV. So my team also supports YouTube TV. And then there's a number of everything from cat entertainment videos. It's YouTube.
In HDR.
The cats have to floor. Yeah, absolutely. 4K HDR videos to entertain your cats. I'm not going to question. They get viewership. So
it's the brights that really get the cats going. So
that must be it. The very realistic squirrels that they have running across. But one of the this summer there was, I thought, just an amazing broadcast that I found of the America's Cup in Barcelona, the big yacht race, and they did that race in HDR using, I think, drones, and the use of it was really, really impressive.
And that was live, or was it?
It was live. It was live, coming into us live. They were doing the full production. I'm still looking for the people that did the production because they did such a great job on it. If you can find that, take a look. They did a really, really good job.
That's outstanding. And then you've made a lot of different changes in the ingest, right? So there's potentially AV1 and HEVC, but also SRT floating around a little bit. What are you doing there as far as ingests opportunities?
So when we first came out with HDR, the only way for someone to send us HDR at the time was through HLS. And so we had to use HLS in order to do it.
And that's because RTMP didn't do 10-bit, right? Or is it?
That's right. RTMP did not do 10-bit. We talked with a number of people, including yourself and some friends over at Meta and at Twitch, and realized that if we needed to move the ecosystem forward again. So we started something called VioVera, which is a consortium of a bunch of people interested in ingestion protocols to enhance the RTMP spec and get permission from Adobe to do it. So we've generally been doing that. We also work really closely with broadcasters, and what we find is broadcasters are either using Zixi or SRT. Zixi is a proprietary format, which we basically can't use inside of our data centers. We'd only be able to use it on the edge. And so we prefer SRT internally.
Now if someone was choosing between the two, from your perspective, which one is the most stable? Is there a huge difference?
So, I've heard pros and cons for each. The advantage of SRT is it's open source.
Right.
The disadvantage of SRT right now is that it is not a internet friendly protocol. It will grab as much bandwidth as it can.
Right.
And so this is one of the reasons that we're a little reluctant to open up SRT to everyone. Typically, if you know what you're doing, we'll turn it on for you. But just, turning it on for everyone is probably not a good thing for the internet.
and then AV1 now is part of the pipeline. How is that being integrated?
So last year, the graphics card company all came out with the ability to encode AV1.
And a lot of hardware, a lot of Apple hardware, but a lot of hardware in general can decode the AV1.
That's right. So decoding's been around for about 2 years, 3 years. Encoding is just recent. The new cards being announced at SEC are CES.
Footballs on the
those new cards are actually doing an even better job. Like NVIDIA announced like a 10% improvement in AV1 encode. So here's a little secret. If you want to have, we can spend more bits on streams where we feel that the creator really cares about quality. video quality, and one of the signals that we use for that is what are they sending us for ingestion. So if they're sending us higher bit rates and they're using HEVC or AV1, we will give you higher quality VP9 transcodes. And, in the future, I'm hoping we're also going to give you AV1 transcodes.
Yeah, one of the things we noticed when we were playing with 4K is that when we went to 4K, suddenly our 1080p stream got dramatically better than it was when we were just doing 1080p.
That's exactly right. And one of the things that does is we're going, oh, you care, like you're sending us something bigger, and so therefore we're gonna. If you sent it in HEVC or AV1, we would have done the same thing.
Oh, interesting, very interesting. CJ, you had more?
Yeah, it's amazing the work that you and your team have been doing. I think you said you were talking about it with them since 2019 in a LinkedIn post. That all finally getting out to where it's something that I'm just pulling up on my iPhone as watching is the first time where I've started to notice, oh, I don't want to watch this video in my browser anymore. I want to make sure that I'm watching this on a really good high quality HDR display. And it's a phenomenon that I think more and more people are going to start gravitating towards higher quality displays directly as a result of the work that your team is doing, because the content's accessible. It was kind of a little bit for the nerds until it's in something that's as ubiquitous as YouTube. I mean, have you seen a change in the types of devices that people are using as a result of the HDR efforts?
We note if a creator says that they're going to stream something in HDR, we notice that they move to living room devices in particular, or they move to better quality mobile devices. Viewer behavior will change if they see that that something is going to look better in, say, HDR or something like that.
Do you see more moving towards? I don't know whether I'm an outlier or not, but I've noticed that about 80% about 80% of what I watch is YouTube, and about 80% of that is on a TV. Like, I don't watch it on my cell phone. I don't really watch it I sometimes watch it on a computer on a second monitor, but almost everything is I sit down and watch it. I just sit down and control it on the TV.
Yeah. YouTube has now become the dominant living room watch device, certainly in North America, and it's starting to move to the rest of the world depending on viewing habits. Brazil, certain parts of Europe are seeing the same thing, where more and more people are watching YouTube in the living room. And some of the things that's driving that is we're pushing better and better video quality, and people are noticing. And if they've got a better video, they want to watch it on living room.
Right.
We have a lot of companies sending us things like soccer internationally. And what we noticed is that in Brazil, where we have a lot of soccer, we noticed that a lot of people suddenly, after they got used to watching it on YouTube, suddenly watched on television. And mobile will only come in if the game is very, very exciting at the end. People see it on a social media, and all of a sudden you'll see this big spike of mobile coming in. But the bulk of the viewership is on television if it's interesting, high-quality content.
Yeah. I think we got a couple questions rolling in. And as a note for everyone watching, Kirk is going to jump in at 8 o'clock right after the show into after hours and can answer more informally, answer some more questions as well. So we're only going to get to a question or two here, but he'll be available right after the show as well.
Go ahead, Alexander.
This one is from JJ McKenna in Santa Venetia, California. Where is the least painful path to request SRT streaming for a channel?
If you have a solution partner,
that's the signal. That's the signal. Ask your solution partner. If you don't know what a solution partner is, maybe not.
Well, or you can reach out to us. We'll ping me in after hours, and we'll figure something out. I can turn it on.
Amazing.
Yeah, I know a guy.
Yeah.
No,
I know a guy. Yeah,
we know people.
Greg Kadoki in Toronto, will we be able to get 5.1 out of YouTube from a web browser or a dedicated YouTube desktop app?
So let's see. It is primarily on living room. We need a device that we can pick up the when we get 5.1, we produce both stereo and 5.1 surround. We will determine if a device is capable of supporting 5.1, or we think it's capable of supporting 5.1 and deliver it there. Right now, we're not doing it on mobile. Hopefully that's for live. It is done on mobile for video. And hopefully mobile is coming to live soon.
Let's jump to the next question.
This one's for me. Why is Canada so difficult with respect to content rules? I notice it takes years sometimes for us to get deals to bring in new services. YouTube TV is not available in Canada, for example.
Oh, can't hear you, Kirk.
I don't know how I got muted. YouTube TV is a difficult one and we're talking quite a bit about what we're going to do in terms of the international market. And the problem is that there's different contracts and different rules in different countries for doing that type of content. There's no way I can promise anything's going to change as far as rights up in Canada. As I sort of say, the minute you get lawyers involved in a software development project, your timelines extend quite a bit.
Next question.
This one's from John Wallace in Pontiac, Michigan. I would love to see YouTube allow someone to feed a SDR and an HDR feed and allow the user to select which feed they would like. It would give us greater flexibility to correct both feeds.
So there's a cost component to that, and then there's a synchronization component to that becomes really, really challenging. I think the solution that we are looking at, and again, I'm not promising anything in the near-term future. The solution that we're looking at is giving you control over the tone mapping. This is probably a little ways out, but that's probably the best solution that solves both the cost issue as well as the synchronization and chat and everything else.
Next question.
This one's from me as well. Is it detrimental to your stream's quality if you're delivering 4K and try to send more data than what Google's documented requirements are?
You can go up to 50 megabits per second, and we won't throttle you. If you exceed that for any period of time, if we detect that you're being abusive by sending us way too much data, we may start throttling you. But in general, it depends on what your local network conditions are. And the higher quality. In fact, using things like HEVC and AV1 is a great way to really maximize your quality for the bit rate that you are able to send us.
Have you thought, specifically for gamers, but probably for other things, have you guys thought about higher frame rates than 60 frames a second?
We thought about yes. The challenge is the challenge is okay. Let's do a little sort of back of the envelope math. Streaming 4K basically 4x's the amount of data you're sending over 1080p. So if you give me a 1080p HDR feed, you're only increasing by about 25%. You give me a 4K, same 4K feed, you're increasing by 4.
Now the question is, but if I limited it, saying it's 1080p, but it's 120 frames a second,
you're more than doubling, and you're really, really making my transcoders heat. The challenge is, so we want to give you as high a quality and as good highest quality as possible.
Yeah.
And we want that both for what you can send us as well as what we can send to the viewer. And so trying to balance that curve while at the same time making it so that we can afford to do so, given it's a free service, we have to make some trade-offs. 120 frames a second is probably, I would say, is a doubtful bet at the moment.
So pretty. Anyway.
I know it's pretty. But
it's pretty. I look at it all day. Next question.
Tommy Shanson, St. Paul, Minnesota. Is there any significant improvement in quality with YouTube-supported hardware?
Google-supported hardware, or
is there a list? Do you have what would you say are the best encoders for ingest for someone to use? Do you have any opinions?
That I'll say publicly? No.
Okay, there we go.
So here's the secret. You can send us more than one stream if they're if they're identical, and you send us more than one stream, you will have much better reliability than if you just send us one.
Right.
The encoder, there's encoders that are able to do that. Most of the modern graphics cards do pretty well. And then the professional encoders are all great. Like, Amazon, Cobol, all of these, they do really well. They talk to us all the time. We try to make sure that we're doing what we can to help them. And in fact, we're actually certifying encoders for SRT. So if you go to our certification page and you want to do SRT, it's best to use one of those certified encoders.
That's great. Last question, and then we'll let you go and talk to you a little later.
Courtney Gooden from Hollywood, California. Is there any way to get the YouTube TV browser-based player to respect dark mode on a PC?
That one I just don't know that I can ask.
He's like, I move the bits. I don't do the. I don't do the story.
I don't do UI. I don't do UI.
Very good.
There's the user interface, and here's the user interface respecting dark mode on Google. So we know the company knows how to do it, but
yeah.
The guys that write the user interface just don't respect dark mode.
For you, Courtney, I'll talk to the front end people and see what we can do.
It'll be great if it suddenly becomes
fill light on my phone.
In the next 3 months, if it goes to dark mode, we know that it's all Courtney's fault. So anyway, hey Kirk, thank you so much for jumping on and hanging out with us for a little while.
I appreciate it. I'll see you in after hours.
We'll see you in
super
after
excited
hours.
We really do view YouTube as the top, the top platform to stream to, and we just really appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Yeah, you guys do a good job.
Thanks. So again, Kirk will be here at 8 o'clock in after hours to have a more informal discussion with everyone. So we'll see him there. All right. CJ, I'll hand it back to you.
Back to your regularly scheduled programming. Remember, we've got a ton of questions and only till the top of the hour. So your questions and your votes drive the show. So don't forget to use Makana not only to ask questions and chat, but also to vote on those questions. If you don't have access, sign up at officehours.global/join, and you'll get the email with links to Makana, Discord, everything else. Alexander, let's jump into the questions.
Yes, this one is from Andre Dole in Berlin. Is the vMix Zoom integration really that stable? I did extensive tests with a beefy laptop and the mimo test meeting using 8x 1080p sources. The system seems to perform very well, even better than capturing ZoomISO sources via Decklink. Thoughts?
Go ahead, Jonas.
I think in general, their integration is pretty solid from a point of, if you look at how many different SDKs and conversions you need to go through to get from ZoomISO to vMix over a Decklink card, you do the Decklink SDK twice, you do a conversion from a raw video, from the encoded video from within Zoom to raw video, back to raw video to the intermediary that vMix uses. So there's a lot of benefits there. In general, I have seen the integration be pretty stable. There's sometimes a couple issues if you push it too hard. And one thing to keep in mind as well is you still have your bandwidth limit. So you might still be limited by how many 1080p feeds you can pull. And it might be like not showing you that you're pulling less. if you get into bandwidth and you get throttled, there's like a penalty box for around 90 seconds is what we see most of the times before it even can try again to upgrade your resolution. But I've seen it be pretty stable. And it just needs one less conversion step in that case.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, I see a lot of people testing in that meeting. I mean, this is it right now. You can see it says this meeting is being live streamed on NDI. If you do go into this meeting, remember it's request record permissions, not live stream permissions. So like this person's trying to live stream and maybe they're using something else like, I don't know, Wirecast or something like that. Or even in vMix, you got to remember to drop down to the little request permissions as recording. And this is just a great service. Thank you to Oliver at Mimo Live for putting this up. I mean, it's a big $4,000 computer that's sitting here in the corner running this meeting, and it's available for you guys if you want to do this exact vMix test and beat on it and see in the real world on your hardware. That's what it's here for, is for you guys to just go. And there's an office hours link that I'll put in the chat so that you could jump right to it. It runs 24 hours a day. It's been running since May, solid. So it's been on that long, months and months and months since last year.
Thanks for that, Guy. That's awesome. Next question.
Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. Does the panel have any recommendations for safely and securely attaching an HDMI cord to a LiveU Solo without the fear of it falling out? Thanks.
Go ahead, Bill.
So there's a company that I've used successfully a lot. It's called Tether Tools, and Tether Tools has a whole variety of different connectors and things like that. They're specifically developed for photographers originally, where there was a small port, but they've got a lot of things like the one on the upper right there. It's a actual piece of heavy-duty cordage that you can connect to anything on something, and then that little connector allows you to clamp a cable into it. So they've got a whole variety of tools like that. I've always found their stuff to be high quality and good. It's not the cheapest stuff in the world, but when you're looking for something like not breaking a port on a camera or a device, it can be well worth it. So Tether Tools is one of the options.
Guy?
Yeah, I used to own a LiveU Solo and be a dealer and sold a bunch of them. And while I was doing that, I had access to a company called Unlimited IRL. And Unlimited IRL came out with a little specific mounting bracket. It looks like this. It's $125. Price went up. So basically, it allows you to screw into those exact screws. And I'll put a link in the chat to this device, so that way that HDMI is not falling out.
Courtney?
Yeah, I kind of improvise a little solution like that. Excuse me, when I need to do that, I will take a short jumper, like the little cables you get from the streaming stick manufacturers or anything that's designed to plug into the back of a TV. That's a short male to female HDMI that may be 6 inches long or 12 inches long. And then I plug it into whatever I want to secure it into. Then I find a nearby screw, unscrew it, and take a little cable clamp, a little piece of nylon with a hole and a loop in it. And I secure that short cable to the back of the chassis. And then I plug my HDMI into the female connector and put a piece of tape around it. And that keeps it from falling out, and it relieves the strain on the internal plug in the unit.
Next question.
Robert Shoji in Los Angeles. What travel lights, key plus fill, and stands do you recommend for a hotel Zoom meeting? Budget is $400 for 2 lights and 2 stands.
Bill?
You're actually above what I spent on most of that stuff. I'm just going to talk from the lighting point of view. It depends on the goal you're trying to do, but for close-up lights for me, for a hotel or something like that, what I want is a non-square or non-round source. And let me explain my thinking on this. Often I find myself in a different mixed light circumstance, and I'm trying to do something with my appearance in front of the computer that will help me look my best on the road. I like a non-square light, and the ones that I use, I don't think Newer still sells them, but they're this form factor. They're about 3.5 to 4 inches on the short side and 6 or 7 inches on the other. And what I like about them is that if my design is to like fill my eye sockets in or something like that, because I've got limited lighting capability and my key light is probably up high to give me overall facial fill, a couple of these in my kit will allow me to kind of decide whether I want to use it horizontally or vertical. Do I want to bring in a stripe of light, that more constrained thing, or do I want to broaden it out by turning it horizontal? The other thing that I use a lot, and I think I pulled a couple of them, I have two of these that I carry. They're very cheap, or they were when they were sold. And the other ones I use are these little LED arrays that are self-contained batteries. This looks like the same light, but actually Newer must have bought the patent. This was called a G1S back in the early days, and now it's being made by Newer. They're inexpensive. I like the fact that their internal batteries last a long time. It can do probably an hour and a half easily, or I can plug in just a USB-C power supply and go for much longer than that. So those four lights form the core of my, I need to go on the road and travel with some lighting that I can fix problems with because they don't look the way I want to.
Guy?
Yeah, I always look around and see what the dominant light source is in the hotel room to see if I could take advantage of anything that's already there, any practical lights, and so I'll move stuff around. If you go into my hotel room, everything's everywhere. Actually, step one is to just make sure that you have good internet. So I'll unplug the hotel TV and see. Step one is just unplug that Ethernet and see if you can tap in and get a hardwired line before you even mess with lighting. Make sure you got a strong internet connection for your Zoom meeting. I like these things. These are the Aperture MT Pros. You'll see me use these in the kit. When you buy these, it comes with a little tripod that looks like this, and you could mount them horizontally or vertically. And this is a multicolor, so you could do. Sometimes I'll do 3 of these. This is the kit here, and it has a little egg crate as well that is in this travel case. I don't take the travel case with me just because it's a little bulky for the way that I roll. And then I have another little hair light that I'll use, or again, I'll try to use what's in the hotel room. So you'll see me with a bunch of little clamps, and I'll clamp onto things like the luggage rack, and I'll take the luggage rack and put it on top of a dresser, and all of a sudden now I got that height that I need to get that angle that I want. So I don't travel with, big old stands or anything. And these are magnetic as well. So if I find something that I can just see if I could get, it's not in the frame. There's a stand right here that I could just clink, and it attaches right to it. So these are very strong. Actually, you can see it like this. So that's the Aperture MT Pro.
Marker? Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I like these Newer. Newer makes a nice budget-priced pair of stands, which is kind of what you're calling for. Now, you can't slip this into your luggage very easily, but it does come with its own travel case. It has 2 stands, 2 lights, and the power supplies, and they're both bicolor, and they're large panels, so they're flattering light. And if you need something a little more beefy than those stands, they do make another stand that you can get that's a much broader base and a little taller for a reasonable price of about $34. Comes with its own travel case as well. And I've had no trouble with mine. It's illuminating my lustrous face right now.
Bill?
Just one other little tip, too. I also invested in a bunch of these. These are about 12 inches, maybe 13 inches long. Unlike most of the other little tripods that these are kind of more like a monopod or stick things. They have a 1/4-20 on the top, but these come out to be about 6 feet tall when extended to the end, which means that I can use it in low mode like this on a desk if I have to do that. But if I find myself needing a light on the hotel room floor and I needed to get up high enough, 4.5, 5 feet to be eye level, these kind of things really work well. A lot of companies make them now, so look for that extra stand light and something that's not like a traditional stand.
Yeah, I think Liberty had at one point recommended a product for an iPhone tripod that was similar to that from Autumtek, AUTUMTEK. I have like 3 of them now. They're just as small. Next question.
This one's from the QR code. Reina Dopopopoulos in Situate is asking, could you take a shotgun mic and paint it green screen color and paint it out in post?
Go ahead, Jonas.
There's 2 things to keep in mind here, or 2-part problems that you need to solve. Problem 1 is selecting the area that you want to remove, and part 2 is putting something there so it looks like it's removed. The green screen might make it easier for you to key it out, and then you have a hole there. So how are you going to fill that hole? Now you need to track your footage. You need to maybe use generative fill to fill that hole, add some grain over it so it looks like it's a live video again. And then you went through all that trouble, and then you notice that now your actor or whoever has green cast on something. I personally would, one of the nice things with shotgun mics is that you can put them a little bit further away or farther away from the camera. Otherwise, I personally would not paint it green. I would leave it black, see if you can hide it, or Resolve has actually pretty cool features where you can drag around an object, and then it tracks it, or you, like in the past, I would have done this in After Effects, where you first do a camera resolve, where you track the camera, and then in 3D space, you do a replace. But I don't think the green screen color is going to help you. It might even hinder you because now you have problems with tracking. Since it's one plain color, you would have problems with that. So I wouldn't say green screen coloring a microphone would be a good idea. And then also there's, depending on what mic you have, you wouldn't want to paint the grill, or you wouldn't want to paint like some of the fins on the side. That all would shape the sound.
Alex?
Yeah, one thing to know about visual effects shots in general is that 80% of visual effects shots all include rotoscoping. And we rotoscope out a lot of things that don't work. Mics dropping into the frame is a pretty common thing for us to rotoscope out. The big problem, if it doesn't go in front of the actor, we can usually just get rid of it. And it's really not that big of a deal. It wouldn't be worth the amount of angst that you would have with your audio department if you started painting their mics. I'm not sure that they would talk to you again. So, like I gave them a Sheps and it came back green. I don't think that I think that there'd be a lot of considerations that you'd have to talk to your union steward, and there'd be a lot of upset. So I think that I don't think that would go well. But in general, so many things are just painted out. And in a more consumer area, you might use generative fill, but the guys that rotoscope this stuff now are so good at what they do. The main thing you want to be careful of, especially if you have some kind of furry, a furry on the outside of the mic, is it doesn't interact with someone's hair. Ask me how I know. So anyway, if the furry gets behind someone's hair or in front of someone's hair, that interaction is super hard to get to separate, almost impossible. But in general, people will just these mics come in pretty. I don't know how often it is recently, because it's been a while since I've watched a lot of film outs. But a lot of film outs, when we looked at them, the mic dropping into the frame was something that happened probably 1 out of every 10 shots. We got a little bit of a mic, somewhere, because they're just trying to get as close as they could to it, especially for directors that don't like to use ADR. You end up with that people getting aggressive. I mean, they have little labs on them and everything else, but in general, getting rid of that is just like someone just circles it, and then it goes to roto and it gets taken out, and no one would know better.
Courtney?
Yes, this is known as the wide and tight dilemma these days in shooting, and it is the bane of the sound mixer, where they now have 2 cameras because they're so cheap. We got to use them. They're on the truck. Why don't we put 3 cameras up and we'll shoot the close-ups and the wide shot master all at the same time? Which means you can't get the boom.
Not that he's bitter.
Not that I'm bitter. Can't get the boom microphone in to get the good quality sound for that close-up, because the camera's covering a wide shot. So what they're doing these days is you're having a pre-production meeting with the visual post-production people, and as Alex said, it's very easy to just matte track and remove that with a garbage matte in post, as long as the mic doesn't dip in front of or cause shadows on the actors themselves. It can be easily removed in post, and they only have to remove it on the wide shot. So you get your good quality sound without having to try and lip match the sound of the close-up over the wide shot. And generally, a lot of times they'll only cut to that wide shot for like 3 seconds at the beginning of the scene, then they're into close-ups. You never come back out until the end. So that's been the agreement. And if you're doing green screen work, remember, if they're just standing on a green screen, you don't have to paint the mic green. You can just garbage matte it out, as long as it doesn't overlap any of your action that's in front of the green screen. So you never have to worry about intruding into the green area of a green screen shot, because they can always easily garbage matte it out in post.
Guy?
Yeah, you can purchase, depending on how much you're dipping in. Sheps has the green or chroma key blue windshield, so you don't have to paint the mic. Their mic is already blue. The other thing that you can do is shoot what's called a clean background plate. So here you have your talent, you have no microphone in the shot, and then you have the microphone in the shot. Come on, where's the shot? Hit the microphone. Did he already take it out? Basically, you start with the microphone out of the shot, and then you put here we go. So now the microphone's in the shot, and then it's just a crop because you have the shot without the microphone, and then you have the shot with the microphone, and you just basically, you don't even have to do a matte. It's just or I guess on this shot it would be a matte. But typically, you could just do a crop because you have so much headroom. This is an example where it's actually right next to the client, but you get the idea. So clean background plate, but that does take pre-production in advance to let people know, hey, we need to get this clean background plate, get the boom out of the shot. Now let's go ahead and drop it in.
You can ask your questions 24/7 at askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global, or you can hit the QR code right here. It's super easy. No sign up or login, just name, question. We'll work it in over the next few shows at askofficehours.global. Next question.
This one's from Alexander Knight in Port Coquitlam, BC. That's me. Other than cost, I've heard some filmmakers talk about preferring HDR over Dolby Vision. Why choose one over the other? What are the advantages and disadvantages?
Alex?
Dolby Vision is more complicated. It takes a little bit more control. It is far more detailed than most of the other solutions. Now, it can be argued that HDR10 Plus and Dolby Vision are very close together. The difference is HDR10 Plus was done because Samsung doesn't want to pay Dolby any money, and the result is that you don't have the same team managing the spec. So Dolby has a vested interest, and they have an entire division that is there to improve the spec, and HDR10 is really just about saving money. So as far as if you're betting on something, you're going to get a better solution out of Dolby Vision. So Dolby Vision is going to give you up to, there are specs that go up to 10,000 nits, but really it's up to 4,000 nits. And they've really built a very intelligent way to use metadata on a frame-by-frame basis, which you wouldn't really do frame-by-frame, but really it's a scene-by-scene basis. So, HLG, we talked about, it might be better for streaming. It doesn't have as much detail in the highlights, so you take the PQ curve, which is what Dolby Vision is based on, and Dolby Vision can be applied to HLG, by the way, but most of the time we use the PQ curve, and then that goes up to 1,000 nits, and then metadata is used to stretch it from there to typically up to 4,000 nits, depending on what the projection device is capable of, or the screen is capable of providing, and that way it can adjust. It's using the metadata to adjust up and down for the monitors to make sure that what we talk about a lot when you talk about Dolby Vision is the creator intent. And in addition to this, there's a lot of control over, again, on a frame by frame, which is really a scene by scene basis. Someone can go into something like Resolve and do color correction to the red, green, and blue trims, as well as the max fill and the max CLL. And that's going to let them really make that scene look as good as it possibly can on a scene-by-scene basis, which you're not going to get quite as much detail when you're dealing with HLG or HDR10. So that's kind of where that sits. The tools are much more refined than for the other the other options that are out there. And so I think some people are just happy that it's bright, but when I've had the opportunity to work pretty heavily with both HDR10 and HLG and Dolby Vision. Dolby Vision is clearly a better solution. It's just that it's a lot more complicated because it has to carry that metadata with it. So a lot of times that's the challenge we have, is like when we're doing live work, it's carrying that through the live pipeline. So a lot of times we end up just using a PQ curve and sometimes analyzing it right at the very end to convert it to Dolby Vision.
Alexander, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, and a couple follow-ups to that, Alex. So if I'm, let's say, a content creator, if I'm going to make a movie and distribute it and sell it, one, do I need to pay Dolby a license just to have that in my movie? And also, does well, yeah, that's my main question.
I don't believe so. I actually don't know because I've never had to do that. But I think that the only thing you're doing there is you're paying Resolve. You're paying for Resolve to have the higher end Dolby Vision tools, I believe, are in the studio, and they're paying a license to Dolby to have it in their device. I don't believe that there's any licensing that's required for Dolby Vision to do that. So I think that you can deliver it that way, because the licensing is really about the software manufacturers, the hardware manufacturers. So Dolby doesn't need to charge you as the creator. They charge every time you see Dolby Vision on a TV or a monitor or your phone or whatever. Dolby got a couple cents out of that. I don't know, or a couple dollars. I don't know, but that's that's where they're making their money, not from the creators creating the content.
Next question.
Aaron Cody in St. Louis, Missouri. Do you use KVMs in production? How? Tips.
Jonas?
While I do most of the time I'm remote, and then we use remote access tools. KVMs, especially if you build a kit that's going to be on site, are really great. I'm going to show you the ones that I have used. So these are the Decklink KVMs. What's really great about those, they are IP-based. They work with normal network switches. One caveat is that they're multicast, which is cool and bad at the same time. Cool, because you can have multiple receivers receiving the video signal. It's really low latency. It's high quality. Bad, because you need to be able to deal with IGMP and all that. But if you have a proper network setup, I think you'll be able to manage. One thing I really like about these is you see the console on computer. So one thing you can do is there's two modes you can put them in. You can put them into TX or RX mode. As the sender, all it does is it forwards the computer to any receiver. But the cool thing with a receiver is I can still plug in a computer and I have access to my local computer as well. So this is ideal if you have, let's say, you have a kit that you want to separate out the processing part and the control part to an operator station. You have one fiber line to your video rack. It has all your monitoring, all your control signals. But then also this, you have a small computer in your operator station that you can connect through that. But then you can also connect to all the other computers that are in the rack, in the processing facility, especially if you are working somewhere and all your equipment is way too loud, so people would not want to sit next to it for weeks. We've had really great success with these. What's also cool is they are PoE powered, so wherever you are, just plug down a PoE switch and you can use them. And we use them all the time.
Courtney?
Yeah, those look very cool, Jonas. What's the price of those? Do you know?
It's about $600 per unit, which isn't too bad for like a proper KVM. And the great thing is that you don't it's the same exact model for sender and receiver. Like you on the fly can switch it around. So if you, for one event, need 3 senders and 2 receivers, fine. If you need to switch it around for the next event, that's also fine.
That's great. I have another couple of suggestions and my experience with KVMs is using in production very cautiously, because occasionally I would use it to handle multiple computers in a fly case that I only have room for one big monitor in, and to be able to switch between them. And I try and find a KVM that has either a remote button or because you might have to mount it in the back of the case, or a keyboard combo that will switch between your inputs. So whatever your main keyboard is, a lot of times it's double tap on the scroll lock key and hit a number if it's multiple input, or just double tap if it's just 2 inputs. The other thing is I never use it. If you're using it on a computer that you're using the video output of that computer to go live on the air or go out to some monitor that will be seen, you got to be careful about where you leave your mouse cursor when you switch inputs, because when you switch inputs, it switches your mouse control and it switches your video output. And if you're ever going to take that video output from one that you're going in and out of remote control over, you can leave the mouse cursor on the screen. It gets very annoying when people see the output of video where they're not supposed to see a mouse cursor and know that it's a computer. And there's a mouse cursor sitting in the middle of it because you've switched off of it to another computer and don't realize that it's going out with that mouse cursor.
And coming from the chat, Mickey McAture in the Philippines said in the machine room, rack room, server room, yes, but not at operator stations. That way, all machines are visible and controllable by any of the operators at all times. And then John Wallace says he's got the Windows PCs hooked up to a KVM that are running the office hours rack, and he had the, I think it's Raloy, R-A-L-O-Y, Raloy RWX119 Cat X. If you're enjoying office hours, there are a few ways to help. You can like and subscribe to our channel. Also, you can donate. We're a nonprofit, so if you go to officehours.global/donate, you can chip in there. We'd appreciate it. Or you can volunteer. And if you're interested in volunteering, sign up at officehours.global/volunteer. Next question.
Next question is from Guy Cochran, Seattle, and here on the panel. What's the difference between remote production, REMI, and distributed production?
Jonas?
That's one of those famous Cochrans that he's throwing the ball. I wrote a little article because in the years that I've been working in cloud, remote production, REMI, on location, on site, it gets a little iffy. So most people don't actually know what is what. And the keynote you mightn't have noticed, I didn't even mention cloud. And otherwise, I can't stop speaking about cloud. We'll get into that real quick. I'll give you the 90-second version of the article. So basically, every production can be separated into three parts. You have acquisition, that's all the cameras, tallies, intercom, mics. And then you have processing. So now you have all your raw signals, your video streams, your audio streams. Those need to be processed, they need to be mixed, they need to be switched, color corrected, all that type of thing. But that processing doesn't do anything by itself. So to control that processing, you now also need control. That's a switcher. I also count something like a multiviewer to that, because your operators in the control part of the system need to see things, they need to hear things. It's your faders, all of that. And if we separate productions by those three different types, it's becoming a lot clearer what we're talking about. So if I'm gonna cut to this, there's basically, I make the case that there's four types of production. There's on-site, acquisition, processing, control, all happening in the same place. You have your camera, goes into your ATEM, you click on your ATEM, done deal. Then there's remote or remote controlled, where acquisition and processing happens in the same place. So, for example, you ship your cameras and, let's say, a carbonite switcher in a rack and all your processing to the location. But then you don't actually have all your labor there. You don't have all your crew there. They are getting multi-viewers and they're controlling it remotely. The big advantage with that is that you're doing a remote production. You have all your people remotely. But the bandwidth requirements for that compared to REMI or distributed are a lot lower, as all you need to do is send the final feed and the multi-viewer feeds. So you have a whole lot lower bandwidth requirement. And with this, you can also do IMAC, because while you might have a latency issue with when your crew reacts to what they see to when that command is back, so like you get a perceived latency of the round trip time, it isn't in the video signal. So it's only in the cuts where you have the latency, not in the video signal, so you can still bring it up on the screens. Then there's REMI, which is common for a lot of the second tier, third tier spots, where you put the acquisition out on the field, and then you bring all the raw sources back into your facility. In your facility, you have processing and the control. It's your production hub. You have everything there.
Well, just for some of the viewers, could you, what's the acronym? Could you just explain the REMI?
Remote Integration Model.
Thank you.
Basically, it's pulling all your sources back. That can be compressed via something like SRT. It can be uncompressed over SMPTE 2110. There's 2110-22 for compressed video feeds as well. There's J2K, J2000, all of those different formats that you could use to bring them back. But processing on controls still happen in the same facility. The big advantage with that is the perceived latency for your operators is almost negligible, because now they're in the same, I like to call it delay bubbles. Like if I do a production, I build delay bubbles of who is in what delay. Like, for example, my local producer is in 0 delay bubble. And then all my crew that is working on it remotely is on the 1 second delay bubble. That just keeps you active on who sees what when. So REMI is great if you have a lot of events that you need to react to, highly cut. And then one more thing is distributed, where you put the processing into a central hub somewhere else. Then you have the control either centralized in a control facility or everybody from home. So cloud, for example, is a great example for distributed. You take all your signals, you shove them up in the cloud, and then if you're all in the same truck, or if you're all in the same studio, or if you're all at home, doesn't really matter. The reason why cloud isn't in here is cloud is more about your business model than it is about a type of production. Every cloud production is distributed, but not every distributed production is a cloud production. And often that has to do is, do you want to optimize for OpEx or CapEx? Cloud is very OpEx heavy, and sadly with some of the vendors still requires a good bit of CapEx. Well, if you do this on-site in your own private cloud or private data center, then it's still very CapEx heavy. And of course, our favorite word of it all is there's also hybrids of all of this. So I don't talk about those. That is just where reality then sets in. And I have this small diagram, what goes from where to where. Acquisition sends all the video signals, tallies, return feeds go back. Control gets the multi-viewer, control data, shading control. But this is a really great, in my opinion, concept of how to make sure that you are aware of all the different pieces and where it is. Like if you tell me you're doing a distributed cloud, I know I need to care about multi-viewer latency. I can't do a iMac thing because all the processing is offsite. I have 2 paths and all that. So like there's all these different things that is then easier to step through. And then you suddenly realize cloud isn't that much different than you remoting into your facility because you're stuck in a snowstorm at home. So like I try to explain to people that cloud is more about the business model, not about the production type. And often people then realize that cloud isn't that scary.
Go ahead, Bill.
I just wanted to brag on Jonas. When I saw this, I thought, what a brilliant way to consolidate a lot of really ephemeral thinking into something you can really latch onto. It is well written. It is simple. It is very graphic, so you can see what's going on. So if you haven't copied that code, and if you haven't, I'd grab a copy of this just for all the people who ask me questions. I'm going, this is beyond me. Read this and you'll understand 90% of what you need to know about these differences in different types of sections. So well done, Jonas. Nice job.
I was looking at Bill, and about halfway through Jonas's, extremely protein-dense, packed little presentation there, I'm just thinking to myself, oh boy, what is Bill going to say? How is he going to follow this one? I was like, that is perfect. Just Jonas, thank you.
I was just so impressed when I saw it. It's really a beautifully constructed package.
I also like the style of the diagrams. I may pirate that. Next question.
Pinkinoki in Toronto, the new DVS Pro is a subscription only. How many would stump for a subscription over perpetual license?
Go ahead, Jonas.
I think if you look at the past, how it was where you like burned your license and it wasn't movable from device to device, I much rather prefer a subscription to that. Another thing to keep in mind, and I know this is hard for people that love Apple and Mac OS to hear, it just keeps breaking on the Mac OS platform. You cannot expect a developer to give you a functioning product if they need keeping to put work in. Work needs to be compensated. And that's why I often like a subscription, because now every month I have the power to say, you know what? That update isn't working. You know what? That software isn't working for me anymore. And it's as someone who develops software, it's a great motivator for companies as well, because you look at your churn rate, how many people stopped subscribing to you. New Apple update comes out. Might be hard to make the case, we need to be compatible with that one. If you can't say, hey, last time we did this, suddenly everybody canceled. There's like, yes, a lot of people dislike this model, but also it guarantees you a way to every month or whatever your billing cycle is, say, what, I'm no longer happy. So it's also way less risky than buying the price.
Yeah, it's like the smaller the developer is, the more likely that I am going to be accepting of someone doing a subscription model. And because I want to support them and I want to help them keep their business going. The larger the company gets, the more they start to draw ire.
But
Go ahead,
in all
Cord.
reality, if the company is larger, what happens is, of these lifetime deals, and the math generally in the software industry is it's about 3 to 10 years the price, because that your customer lifetime value, most people cancel around 3 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you buy that thing, you then stop getting support, and then you need to buy again. This way, you need like Pro. And in this case, like the Pro version, for those that haven't seen it, it works on VMs. It has a lot more channels, a lot more capabilities that are probably going to be a lot harder to support. It looks so much better on your books. And like as a PM who tries to make this work in a larger company, it looks so much nicer on your books if you have recurring revenue. It just adds 10x about that to your company evaluation. So there's like an intrinsic value now to that product being successful. So like I hate that we have to like rent everything, but also now you can rent this thing for a month and then cancel it again and move it, and that's good and bad sides.
All right, I want to make sure that we end close to on time because we do have Kirk Haller, in after hours, waiting for more YouTube questions. So I want to respect his time, not hold him up too much. Coming up on office hours, we've got our live-only shows, the members-only department. Saturdays are Q&A, and Sundays our introspection show. You've got to be in Makana for both of those. Thanks to the panel for being here today. It's a privilege to spend an hour getting smarter on my Friday morning. Appreciate you being here. Also, thank you to the back-end crew. Make our show run, keep us organized moving forward. And thank you to our producers for asking such great questions. For the little intro with Kirk, as well as throughout the whole hour, we did have to send some back. So if it was a QR code question, we'll work that back in over the next few shows. If you asked it in Makana, it's back in your notes. So check out your notes so that you can submit it next time you're watching live. It's all Octoversal today. If we had to travel all around the world and ask these questions, we'd have gone 34,000 miles. That's 55,000 kilometers and 269 million bananas for scale. We'll see you in after hours.
Don't like subscriptions because the validation servers get taken offline, and if you have something that's used primarily on a local area network like Dante, and suddenly you don't have access to the internet, hey,
they really have to solve the make me log in every time. I feel like I log into SketchUp and Tableau every time I launch the application. It's like when they do a 0.1 update, it's like, oh, log in, oh, register. Hey, do you want to log in?
Yeah.
It's like, I want to support, I don't mind supporting a developer, just fix the authentication piece. Courtney's absolutely right.
If they take the
Are
servers
you using
offline,
a Mac, CJ?
it's toast.
Yes.
For me, it's just a matter of whether you want to make your payments opt-in or opt-out. Opt-in means I decide when I spend. Opt-out means that I'm going to spend unless I opt out specifically that month. And that's, I think, the big power distribution thing. But everybody has their own needs.
The good news